Hello my friends and welcome to No Nonsense Metal Reviews. I'm George and today I have another installment of Bands You Need to Hear. Another recommendation of a band. If you're not familiar with this particular project, in this case, a project you need to hear, then you absolutely must check it out. Well worth your time. So today's recommendation, today's project you need to hear, is a bit of a weird one. Essentially it is a one-man band, the project, the side project or solo project, if you will, of Fenriz, the legendary 50% of the current Darkthrone lineup, multi-musicianist, a fantastic character and personality within the obscure and cult metal worlds. But to be honest, this doesn't really sound a whole lot like Darkthrone. This project that started way back in the late 80s is diversified and incorporated so many different elements of just music in general, not even necessarily just metal music, that it's just a completely different beast. It is a completely unique sounding and unique prospect in itself. So I am talking about Isengard. Now, I absolutely love that artwork, and I actually have that on a shirt. I think it's that cool. That is so cult and so black metal. But this album, this is actually a compilation album. This was released in 1994, and I apologise if I do pronounce this wrong, but this is Vinterskuga. So this is a compilation, as I say, of different demo recordings. We have Vandreren from 1993. Then we've got Isengard demo from 1989, which was Spectres over Gorgoroth. Chapter 3, Horizons, and yep, that's all. But we'll start with this particular release. As I say, Fenriz does it all. He is the vocalist, he's the guitarist, bassist, drummer. And it's I think it was all recorded at his legendary Necro's Hell home studio. So this album, this compilation, really, it's a bit of a funny one because we get a whole lot of different elements coming in there. The Vandreren demo is an interesting one. The opening track, Vinterskuga, is a good song. It's got that kind of very stripped back, raw. I mean, the whole thing sounds raw as hell, but it's very stripped back, sort of black metal leaning. So that's not too far out of the way. But then we get a lot of different elements for the rest of the duration of that demo. We get sort of long ambient pieces, instrumental pieces, very folky pieces as well. So it's all a bit odd. The Spectres over Gorgoroth is actually far more of shall we say, an old Scandinavian death metal style and sound. Very much more in line with the first Darkthrone album or the previous demos to that, talking sort of circa the soul side journey stuff. Tracks like Thy Gruesome Death, Death Cult, Rise from Below, Dark Lord Gorgoroth. These are really interesting, very raw, primitive death metal tracks with a blackened edge. You imagine, like I say, that sort of early era Darkthrone. And that material, in my opinion, is actually really good. It's dark, it's deep, it's heavy, it's good stuff. Then with the Horizons demo, The Fog is a good track. But then we get some really, really strange, really interesting material like Storm of Evil, which is so totally off chart. It's just completely off the grid. It's like a sort of a gothic. It's got like a Sisters of Mercy sort of edge to it. It's just weird. It's very strange, but it's not a bad song. It's just a bit odd. It's a bit of a kind of moody track. But so overall, it's an interesting listen. Vinterskuga is an interesting listen, but it is not as good as what has followed on, in my opinion. This was the second album, and this was released in 1995. This is, if I'm pronouncing it wrong, I do apologise. This is Hostmork. So Hostmork or Hostmorka, not really sure. This is actually far more of an actual album. This has more of an album feel than Vintaskuga, which just feels, for all intents and purposes, much more like a compilation, very raw, primitive stuff. So this album does sound very stripped back, definitely, but very raw. But this is very folk leaning. The opening track, Nestle Packs. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing these things, but that is a good track. It's raw, but it's got an aggressive edge to it. Very, very folky. I won't go through every track on this album. I would say the overall vibe is that it is very folk orientated. There's a lot of ambience, there's a lot of darkness, there's a lot of experimentation going on there. But the real highlight is Thorn Spawn Chalice. Not because I can pronounce that one or actually read it, but because it's actually a really good song. It's quite a long song, about 8 minutes long, but it's very, very dark, very gritty, very visceral. There is a black metal edge there. Not to neglect the closing track there, Total Death. Now that is, I don't know if it is the Darkthrone song, maybe in its infancy. Time-wise, I'm not quite sure. But of course, Darkthrone's album, Total Death, there's a song on here called Total Death. It's the same man. I do wonder if there's a correlation there, but that is a very short, gritty black metal song. It's a good song. It's heavy, it's nasty. Overall, I would say actually Hostmarker is actually a very enjoyable listen. It's not particularly long. It's dark, it's folky. I like it. I think it's good. But what I do think is the crowning moment is the third and final album of Isengard. Now I'll try. I'm not actually even going to try and pronounce this, but this is definitely more of an album feel, and this one has a really interesting story to it. It's still all Fenriz doing everything, but these recordings here on this album, we get 9 recordings in total. These were recorded and basically forgotten about, lost in Fenriz's collection for years and years and years, and then surfaced. I think I read in here that they've surfaced when he was moving house, and he decided that they were worthy of being worked and released. So the overall sound on this is completely different to Vintaskuga and Hostmark. This is, for all intents and purposes, this is more of a doom metal album. This is what Fenriz terms as cult metal. There are elements of those sort of classic speed metal bands like Agent Steel, early Halloween, but there's a lot of Candlemass and Sabbath and Trouble in there, some Vitus. There's a lot of that going on here, and I think it's really, really good. Dragonfly, that is the second track on the album. That is really gritty. I mean, the sound quality is really raw. It is properly demo material. But it sounds really good. It's a really solid song. The song structure is good. The whole instrumentals, it's good. It's really interesting stuff. Floating with the Ancient Tide, that has a very gritty, that's got quite a Candlemass feel to it. But the personal highlights for me, Slash at the Sun, which is totally just Sabbath, psychedelic, early 70s Sabbath. Cracking stuff. It reminds me a little bit of Sleep, sort of circa the Sciences, the more recent stuff, where it's just totally crazy out there, proggy doom. Amazing stuff. It's a really great track. This is actually the sort of album where you want to be cracking open those pints and you want to be sitting down with the headphones on and just headbanging away, just enjoying that totally crazy out there metal. So for me, totally Slash at the Sun. The Fright, another good track there. Rock a Million is a weird kind of short punky track. And then the Solar Winds Mantra is I guess it's Fenriz's answer to Planet Caravan. But this, the third and final album, is an absolutely superb one. I would totally recommend this for any fans of Sabbath or Candlemass. It's a brilliant recording. And if you just want to get into the mind of Fenriz, the legendary Fenriz, a little bit more, then definitely check Isengard out. I think it's a great project. It's really just enjoyable stuff. experimental metal. It's still metal, it just might be heavily injected with folk elements or black elements at times, doom elements, psychedelic elements. It's just still good metal. So check out Vinterskuga if you want something really weird and out there. If you're feeling more folky, then Hostmork. And if you feel like seriously groovy, doomy metal, then the third album is the one for you. So Isengard, a band you need to hear. Are there any other fans of Isengard out there? I'm very interested to hear anyone else's thoughts and opinions on this very interesting project. If you're not familiar with them, check them out. Thanks for watching, my friends. Do check back soon for more reviews and recommendations. Please feel free to like and subscribe as always. It is very, very much appreciated. Do take care, and as always, stay heavy.